What's up, everybody? Thank you for coming. Today's Friday, April 14th. We'll be diving into finding your setup um, and creating rules around your setup so you can have some fundamentals of or a structure to kind of follow so you don't kind of just trade whatever setups. The kind of the plan of this is to find one setup that you're comfortable with, get confident in that trade, and use that setup as your first, to take your first trades in the morning. Later on, I've noticed that when you try to follow like three setups at the same time, if you're not experienced in those setups, you'll tend to struggle because you're trying to chase all different types of setups. So the way that helped me kind of learn the most was just use one setup. Get comfortable with that setup. So like that, you won't question that you see that setup, because when you throw like four or five setups and you're trying to learn all five of them at the same time, you're gonna get wishy-washy where it's this setup and it's that setup. um, you kind of want to concentrate and focus on one setup so you can identify that setup and kind of clear up any of the other setups, because sometimes setups kind of contradict each other and you're going to get confused. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that I had was, oh, well, I'm going to use a fib and I'm going to use the standard dev. Even though sometimes they lined up, it was still a little bit confusing because you're like, well, it lines up with this. You're kind of second guessing yourself and questioning your your trade. And and that happens even with experienced traders learning new setups. But I think the thing that helps is you focus on one and you laser in on that setup. Because some of them, like for a while, my eyes would catch the inverted head and shoulders, but I couldn't see the head and shoulders until I practiced the inverted head and shoulders for a while, and then I kind of dedicated a little bit of time to see the regular head and shoulders. Um, so this week, Lasagna Cat, he's found his setup. He's back testing it right now. He's taking notes, making sure, confirming that it's a consistent, solid setup before he chooses it as his setup. And Lasagna Cat, correct me if I'm wrong. You chose this setup because it helps your eyes kind of see price action a little bit clearer. Um, is that why you kind of resonated with this setup?
Yeah, because you know, it's not something I understand completely, but it's something that does have a lot of recognizable factors for me. So it's like the basic setup is like an initial dump out, um, find support, first leg up, and then look for a higher low, like draw a fib. It's basically like a fib setup after a dump out, I
Yep.
guess is what I would call it.
Yep.
Um, and the reason why I chose that is because A, it seems to happen really frequently, which has a couple benefits. One benefit is if it happens frequently and you're good at it, then you can get winning trades using that setup frequently. The other reason why it being frequent is good is that there's just that many more examples of it to learn from and to study and to see where the consistencies are. Um, and I'll take this one as an example here. This example, and I've got two slides from this example. It actually represents something that kind of mystifies me about this setup. What day is this from? It says the 12th, whatever day that was. I think that was Tuesday or something. It doesn't matter. So like so yeah, so when this happened, um it had the first leg up and then the higher low, that first higher low. One of the things that mystifies me about this dump out and then fib play setup, dump out to fib long, is sometimes there's a higher low and then you draw your fib after that first higher low. But sometimes you draw your fib and it's that first higher low that takes off. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's like, so this was the first higher low, not the second one. Sometimes it's great if like it bases here. There's like a tiny higher low here, and then the real push, then you fib out from there and catch the second higher low. The reason why I'm really taking note of this is that a lot of times when I enter on the first higher low, it goes against me. Now I have two thoughts about this. One thought is, all right, just say screw it and don't do the first higher low. Just do the second one, wherever that should happen to happen. But the other thing is, well, it does happen a lot from the first higher low. So what are the characteristics that make that work out? Um, but putting that aside for now, I'll just communicate what I see here. So here's the dump out. And while it's dumping out, I'm saying to myself, where could it find support to begin making my setup? This is my MES chart, so it's not showing SPY levels, but it did hit a good support on SPY, so I knew the support was there. Um, it flashed one of these green arrows, right? A green arrow does not mean enter the trade at all, but sometimes a green arrow shows up when a setup might be about to form. It's just like, it's a heads up. It's like, hey, if you're getting a little sleepy, be less sleepy and watch close. Um, and so I saw that, but even before that, I saw that we had these big candle closes beneath the Bollinger Band, which can sometimes signal that either a scalp is coming and then come back down, or the beginning of the setup. And then down here, I'd RSI overcooled. So basically, before anything really happened, I had three indications that something really could happen. I had the big candle closes under Bollinger Band, um, and then the arrow, and then the RSI overcooled. Now, also, these candle closes under Bollinger Band, I guess they don't mean much until something closes inside and opens inside. But I was kind of anticipating all that. And if I'm rambling on, or some of the details don't seem to fit together, just please pipe in and just ask me to clarify. Don't worry about, what you call it, interrupting or anything. Just happy to do that. So, all right. So when I saw those indications that something could happen, I was waiting to see this see the RSI come out from overcooled. This is the 30. The 50's up here. The 50's way up there. It doesn't really come into play in this example, except it kind of does over here. I'll get to that. But the point is like right here at this moment, it was coming out of overcooled and recovering it. So watching the RSI, watching this stuff, this is all a heads up for me to go over to the MACD and watch that. On the right-hand side, this is just another MES 1 minute chart. It's the exact same chart. Jean-Jacques is saying, do we ask question in the Zoom chat or Discord chat? I guess,
Uh,
what do you think, Semper?
Either in the Zoom chat or the Discord, doesn't matter. We'll keep an eye on it. Just, uh, yeah, just shoot it wherever you want. No
Yeah,
matters.
the important things to ask. Yeah,
Yep, yep,
more
exactly.
questions better. Yeah. um, so yeah, so like when I was seeing the RSI, when I was seeing the green crossover arrow, that's called an RSI crossover. That's what that arrow is. I still don't know the theory behind it, but it exists. And then I was like, all right, RSI starting to happen. Uh, these indicators have set up. Let me go over to the MACD to see if it's closing in or crossing. And here's something that Semper's been telling us about for a while. It's that when you see the MACD closing in on itself like this, so it's like the MACD is wide over here, but it's closing in over here. And I was thinking in my mind that this was also all happening during the pop-up. All this stuff happens sort of at the same time, a little bit ahead of each other. So when I saw this leg up, I fibbed down. I fibbed down from the first red pullback down to the base. And as I was doing that, I was like, I would like to see the MACD close up. And going over to this side of the chart, as these two red candles pulled down, the MACD was closing up and it looked like it was gonna, be good for a cross.
Yep.
And then the MACD and then the RSI down here rather pulled back. to the 30 after coming out of overcooled. So what this brings me to is wondering that previous question, should I buy on the first pullback of the first leg up or wait for a second pullback? Now, to me, there are a lot of good indications here that a first pullback would be good. It's also catching support. This is my, what you call it, standard dev center. So there is support at that first pullback. It's not just my ad zone on the fib. There is
Mhm.
like established support there. So you get that established support at the pullback with all the heads up indicators, the initial ones that tell you, hey, start watching. Really good RSI pullback after overcooled. And then over here on the right, the MACD closing in. Again, both of these charts are MES 1 minute, no different.
Yeah, something. So you have like 3/4 of the picture. Where you said you looked at the RSI, you looked at the Bollinger Band, and then the MACD. But
Mhm.
then you gotta kind of walk yourself through the price action as well, cause you gotta train yourself to be able to read price action. You gotta train yourself to see price action. So what I mean is, okay, so um, you see the usually the RSI rule is um, wait for it to go into the overcool, come back, cross right here. Once you see it come back up and cross above here, you want to see it um, create a higher low. So sometimes that'll be the bounce, right? That'll be the bounce. So that's like the indicator saying you want to see a higher low. So here's a bounce. Once you see that bounce, that first bounce, you're already telling yourself you want to see a higher low. Well, where can you see a higher low? Either the RSI is going to create a higher low on the base, or it might even draw down a little bit more and create another higher low below it. But as long as it's a higher low on the RSI, it's a good thing. And that's exactly what happened. But you want when you're seeing this price, the RSI, you're telling yourself you want the MACD to close in. You don't want it to be like straight. You don't want it to be either going like this. You kind of see it if you really pay attention to it during price action. You'll start to notice these little small nuances where you'll see it to kind of flap up and then flap down, flap straight, flap up. You'll see it. And then you'll tell yourself, okay, at the close of this candle, I want to see it hold your buy zone, which is whether it's the 38, the 50, or the 60. You want to see the body in that buy zone and not close below it. So you tell if yours is a 50, if yours is a 50, you want to tell yourself, okay, I seen the MACD, right? You just said that, Lasagna. I seen the MACD closing in. So now you're telling yourself, I want to see a higher low in this area. And
Mhm.
if you see that, um, which is right here, then you already know, okay, it held and it held the base, so it's getting momentum. Where's the next resistance going to be? At the 50 RSI. And is it enough points for you to get in? Is it like, right here, it looks like it was at least 7 points, maybe even more,
Yeah,
if you got in anywhere between here.
yeah.
And 7 points that's a lot of points. Lately I've been catching five pointers, and that's something that we'll build up to, where we'll start you out with one contract for the first week trading, and we're gonna sim trade how you're gonna trade from the get go, right? But we're gonna slowly build up your confidence in this setup, and then we're gonna increase it. Once you get your confidence built up, we're gonna increase it a little bit more, and then soon you're gonna be at 6, 8 contracts,
Yeah.
and that's gonna be some big plays right there, even in MES. Um, so that's kind of what you want to walk yourself through. And that's kind of, if you notice how Brandon walks us through the price action, that's what his eyes are doing. He's seeing the RSI. Where is that at? Okay. And then he's looking at the MACD. Okay, the MACD is crossing right here. We should see a higher. He's looking at his moving averages, and he's walking us through that process. And I think being here so long, we kind of just do it naturally without even knowing. Um, but like I said, you want to see the price action, and if you're walking yourself through that price action and every move is happening, that means you're in sync with price action, and you can actually, you know, be confident in making a trade, a smart trade.
Yeah.
So, like you said, when you asked, do I get in the first pullback? You have the standard depth center support. Um, you have your buy zone. You have the RSI right here creating a higher low. That's already three bull indicators. So you technically can, but if it bounces, and you got to kind of create a rule, right? Something that kind of prevents you from FOMOing out, which is like, okay, it holds my level. If it holds this level, I'm only going to chase it 1 or 2 points up. After that, you may want to just hold back and wait for the next setup.
Yeah.
Because if you get in like right here at the top, right, you're right here at the top of this little zone. Who's not to say that the next candle right here just whip slash down? So that's something that's helped me stop me from FOMOing out is I walk myself through the trade, right? I say, okay, if it holds this level, usually the level that I use is this doji. What I do is I draw a line wherever the doji is, and I want price action to hold that level. If it loses it, then I wait. Then I wait for it to remount that level. If it's not like what I usually like to see is those like the little gravestone dojis where it's kind of just like a T,
Hmm.
and then just put a line right there. If it loses that level, then I wait because who's not to say that it's gonna continue going down over here.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the way what I do it, and then um, I mark that level if it holds it, and I give myself like a 1 point allowance or a 1.5 point. If it goes up 1.5 points, that's my cutoff point. After that, it's a little bit too late for me because then you're gonna risk more. Because you gotta
Because
think
like if you wait to see for it to hold, that could happen really quickly though, right?
exactly, and that's where you're like kind of hesitating. Should I get in? Should I not get in?
Right.
And they're like, okay, it's holding that level. The next candle, it kind of dipped like to the bottom of that level, and
Right.
then it held it, and then you know, you guys see the candle developing with your own eyes. If you see it go up, come back down, who's not to say it came all the way up and then it went down and then it came back. And then Brandon always says the last 10 seconds it'll suck itself up or something. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So I'm glad that I'm listening to those small little details that he's kind of throwing out, even though we're not. He's not like emphasizing those little small details. You kind of gotta catch them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as you see the candle develop, if you see it that it's strong, like it barely even created a little wick. So to me, that's a little bit of strength. Look at the
Hmm.
next one. It opened and it didn't even go down. This one
This
right
one.
here,
Yeah.
um, it opened up strong. So the momentum is kind of strong.
Yeah.
And then you gotta aim. You're either gonna aim for the 161, for the 100. It looks like it hit the 161 here, so it looked perfectly. It rejected it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It even like it was since there was the 200 EMA up there, it decided to touch that real quick and come down. But yeah, that's right in that area. Yeah.
Um, so Jean asked, correct me if I'm saying you're pronouncing your name wrong. But Jean, um, Okay, we'll call you JJ. So your ideal setup, only trade that. I would only trade that until you get comfortable. Don't try to, if you're just, I don't know how how long you've been trading. Um, but I felt like when I first started elites, I was just trying to absorb as much as I can, and it's some people can learn that way, but that's just wasn't my way, and I was trying to cram everything, learn everything at once. As I know, everybody gets influenced by the lure of being rich or making a lot of money, which you can, but you make one small mistake and it'll bite you in the butt, and sometimes I felt that more than once. Um, but you gotta find a way out. So you gotta figure out why you took certain trades, and having a setup, you'll start to train your brain to only trade that setup, and that's kind of what you want to get to. You don't want to FOMO out. Like, if your setup is the 100 fib and you're getting in right here, that's you're getting riskier trades. So you only want to trade. The biggest thing in an elite system is confirmation, which is which was one of the hardest things for me to get, is the confirmation strategy. Um, and Brandon uses that, religiously, and he makes awesome trades. And the other thing that confirmation creates is consistency. Um, Brandon has only had one red trade in a few months. That's one red trade. He still had a green week or a green day. He hasn't had a red day in I can't even remember. But that's what's gonna rub off on us, and that's what has rubbed off on me. I've been consistent for a while, but that's only trading the setups that I know. I don't try to trade any other setups. I only have 3 or 4 setups. If you're new, find your setup, whether it's a standard dev, whether it's Connor's standard dev setup. Um, Dave, even though he trades only options, he has a J hook setup. That's the only setup he trades, is the J hook setup in options, and he does awesome. Um, Even though he does that trade setup, he has a bunch of different option setups. Um, but that's after being experienced. After you kind of get used to your setup, you want to you and then you introduce a new setup. Because let's say that setup, and don't force any trades. That's like the number one rule you should have at the top, bolded, maybe a little bit bigger, is don't force any trades. If you don't feel comfortable with that trade or that setup, just let the chat be white noise to you. Don't even listen to it. Because if that's not your setup, you don't know when to close out, when that person in the chat knows when they're gonna stop out. You're entering or somebody's entering following another trader's trade, even though when they don't know when to stop out, and his risk tolerance might be, he might be able to tolerate more. So that's why I like the way Brandon teaches, is he's teaching you how to fish and create your own setup. He doesn't like try to glue you down to his setup, even though he has a bunch of different setups within the elite system. Um, but find one that helps you identify price action the best. That's like the first thing you need to do, is find a setup, whether it's moving averages, TTM, RSI, MACD. Like I said, not until recently did I start using MACD, and it's helping me clear the price action a little bit better, and it's helping me tell the story. It's kind of like having a magnifying glass. while you're reading the book, it kind of helps you with your not strain your eyes. Um, but yeah, sorry, I kind of went off on a rant. Hopefully that answers your question, JJ. Um, so just find if you're not if you don't know what kind of setups to use, um, ask us what we use as setup, and then you know we can help you with your setup, or that particular elite member can help you with your setup if you resonate with how he kind of trades. Um, yeah, go ahead, Lasagna Cat. Sorry.
Ooh, yeah, no worries. Um, let's see. Well, we covered a lot on this slide, and we covered a lot about what I would look for to be okay with this entry, because this is the entry. This little green line and this little peach line, that's my ad zone from my fib. Um, but as this price action carried on, I've got a second slide of it. Um, because there is another higher low after this one, and this price action continues a lot further. Let me grab that one. Right. Okay. So this was, as you might remember from a few seconds ago, this was my first entry right here.
Hmm.
Um, but then as we see, it creates another higher low here. It's just a little bit higher than that one, but it's also right in my ad zone again, and right on top of that standard def center. Um, so what we also finally have is some volume confirmation. We had this big green one right here, and this red one looks big, but it's not a beat of that one. Um, Another thing that I look for is TTM. I know that Brandon's talking about the oscillation on MACD being the one to watch for like reversals, and the TTM oscillations being the ones for a squeeze. I guess more of a squeeze. I don't know. In terms of price action, it's not a reversal because this would be the reversible. So I guess this is a squeeze. But if you look at this is TTM right here. TTM sellers are stepping way out of the way. Um, and it really caught this second higher low really well, and the strength from it was big. The candles, there's some really strong candles and a couple little choppy ones, and then it made it up to this 261 fib with no problem, and back here to 300 fib. And this sort of goes back to like my wondering, while I'm actually trying to understand the setup that I chose, first higher low or second higher low, like where is my entry, and like um what's the way that I'm going to prefer to play it.
The,
And it's oh, go on.
Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no.
Um, Something that I use is a 50 RSI.
Mm,
Um, so you see it right here how it lines up with this rejection. Um, right here.
yeah.
It lines up with that rejection. And if you see the RSI kind of like closing in on the average one,
Yep.
that can be a say. And that's if you want to kind of close your trade. If it's like 5 points from here to the 100, because it lines up with the 100 fib
Hmm.
too. If it lines up and you're 5 points up, why not lock in like if you have two contracts, lock in one, and then if you see RSI kind of crossing
Yeah.
over here or closing in on the average,
Hmm.
then you might want to close at the break, or either at break even if you want to give that much money back.
Hmm.
But me, I probably would have closed out like 75% the way the RSI was looking.
Yeah.
Um, I would close out 75% there, and if I lost like a point or two or 1.5 points, then I would close it there, and then reevaluate, see if
Hmm.
it creates a high. a higher low
Hmm.
off of this area. So as long as it creates a higher low off of this little area right here, um, you know it's creating momentum to go bust through the RSI, which it did
Right.
right here. So that can be a decision to help you make a decision. Is
Right.
okay, how's the RSI look at the 50? Is it
Mhm.
rejected? Because sometimes it'll bust over the 50 and then come back down and go
Yeah.
like this, right? Or sometimes it holds, goes over the 50, holds the 50, and then goes up. That's why I'm saying lock in 75% here. And depending on how RSI looks, is depending on where you're going to close right here, right? Because if RSI would have busted through right here, okay, the way that the elite's confirmation is for continuation up is okay, the confirmation would be the hold of the RSI 50, right?
Yeah.
And then it'll have momentum to go back up. And then you wouldn't get out until it goes into overheat
Right.
or around there. If it hits the top or if it's getting close right here, maybe lock in 75%. But, if it doesn't go over there and it rejects back down, you already locked in 75% right here. If
Hmm.
you really wanted to, you could have closed out the trade once it went there and seen how it reacted at the 50 again, right? So that's one way to make your decision. The other way would have been okay, rejected there, I close 75%. If it loses this, then I might get out if it crosses over right here.
Hmm.
So that's another way that you can make a decision to get out of the trade.
So just a little cross down, and you might
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just so it'll prevent you like losing or giving back whatever. I mean, even though you're still gonna get a green trade
Hmm.
because you closed out 75% at the 50 RSI. Um, that's how you catch. And that's if you want to close out right here. I mean, you could have held right here and then just closed it out at the cross too.
Right.
Because who's not to say that it's gonna hold right here? But see this little pullback right here, this little area right here, this little green candle.
Hmm.
The way that I would have seen it is if the RSI would have busted through and that little green candle right there would have been the pullback down
Yeah.
and it held the 50, then I would have stayed in the trade a little bit longer,
Hmm.
hoping that or yeah, hoping that it would go up or hold it.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Um, I actually look at this a little differently. So this is a little bit different take on it. I would think that Lozani Cat, for your initial trade, your first one, I would think that, well, let me just go back a little bit. I think that second entry is actually a totally different trade in
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
book.
Yep.
I would think that your first trade using that fib, where you got in, great, and your exit should have been, depending how many contracts you take, right? Your exit, you should have gotten, let's say you take a few contracts, you should have taken some of them off at the 100, and then the rest, especially for newer traders, I think the rest should come off at the 160, at the 161. So
Right.
when it actually hit that 161, I think you should have been totally out of that trade, and it's
Yeah.
done. Trade over. But as it's going back, you've also got that nice red right after the exit green candle at the 161. You've got that nice red doji, and you could start to draw another fib using that, pull that down to lows. And then your second entry point would be a whole new trade, and you could get in. It would still, just by eyeballing it, it would still hit an entry. My guess is that would still hit a good entry point.
Yeah.
And then you can follow that one up to its 100 and or the 168 to continue.
Yep.
Right.
But I would have broken those into two totally separate trades because it did hit the 161. It's over. Unless
Right.
you're doing more advanced stuff, trying to get to the 2 8 whatever they are, the higher ones. I always forget they are, but
The 2618.
yeah, and then the 423, and or whatever. But for me, that's way more advanced than I can do. So I'm just looking, my entire trade would be out at 161.
Yep.
Yeah. And you actually brought up something that I neglected to do, which which, I'm basing this whole chart off of this fib. Um, as you pointed out, and this is drawn where there's no moving average interaction. And this point up here that you pointed out, that's both of my 200s up there. So yeah, like as it reached up there, like you're right, like this fib, I should have erased it and redrawn that fib down from there because that's my 200 EMA as well. So new fib, and that would have contained the first higher low as well in the price action. And then yeah, and that would have been a really solid one.
But that's something I'm glad that Whiplash brought that up because that's usually what I kind of do is I'll adjust it to over here.
Yeah.
But if you sometimes you're a new trader, you don't know if you should adjust. So if you don't know to adjust it, as long as it holds your buy zone, you're good. But I'm glad that he said that he would close out the entire trade at the 161. If you're a new trader, yeah, shoot for that. Once you get a little bit more experience, you would like close out 75% and then hopefully hit your 200, which is my second target when I'm using the fib play, or the 261, which other people normally use, like Brandon uses the 261. But so right here, the 161 lines up. The 161 lines up with the 50 RSI. So right there, it should tell you that's going to be heavy resistance.
Yeah.
Hey, Semper,
Yeah.
I do have a question. By the way, I love this setup. This is, if I was going to post my favorite setup, Lasagna Cat, this would have been it. This is what they would generally look like. But my question is, so on the first fib he drew,
Yeah.
it did go and it actually hit the 100 and then it hit the 1618. But
Yep.
let's pretend it didn't. Let's just pretend that the 100, 1618 were farther up, right? So, price action is moving in your direction and it's great, but now it gets to the moving averages. So, and you've got that nice red doji that you could draw a new fib.
Right
Would
here.
you draw a new fib mid-trade? Because that first fib wasn't completed. Let's just pretend it wasn't completed.
Yeah.
And you've got a trade on, so you're in a trade. Would you actually redraw a fib while you're in a trade and then just readjust that, or would you? Because I always kind of, I don't know what to do in those situations. This is a perfect place to redraw a fib, but I'm in a trade. Do I even want to deal with that, or do you just keep the other one on?
I would. The way that I usually do it is I'll have this fib right here, this smaller fib, right? So I'll have this smaller fib right here. Like you said, it wasn't completed. Let's just act like it wasn't.
Yep.
But then there's a different fib level up here where that has interaction. That's a better fib level. I'll draw that one to see how it lines up with this one. And if they kind of both overlap, then like for instance, so let's say that it's kind of hypothetical, but let's say you fib it right there, and then you have that fib already there, right?
Yep.
But the 161 of this bigger fib is right here at the 100, and then you have the 50 fib right here, and then you have the 38 right here. So that's your zone right there, right?
Yep.
Just hypothetical. You would draw it, and then the 38 lines up with the 50 of there, so that would be your heavy support. So you can leave them both, right? And if
Yeah.
it breaks that level, that's your stop out. If a hard open close below here, below the 50.
Yeah.
That would be your hard stop open close. And that would be a good way to kind of be okay. As long like it's like you're trying to line up the buy zones together or kind of overlap them so you can have a zone of okay, I fibbed this, so this fib might be good because it lines up with the buy zone of this one. So that level, right? Let's just say the 50 to the 38 level lines up with the 50% of this fib. You're gonna know there is a good strong support. For a newer trader, it could get kind of confusing because you have fib over fib and then you got all kinds of moving averages. Um, but Yeah, that's the way that I would kind of deal with that. And then if I know that's a good, and if it bounces off that level, I'll erase the little fib.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hopefully that helps.
Yep.
Um, Let me know, because that's kind of how I kind of did it, and it helped me. Um, but
Perfect. No, thanks.
mhm.
Um, one thing that I want to point out about this setup and another question I kind of have in general, like when I'm looking at this, is like I love looking at 1 minute volume, and like I love having volume on my side on the 1 minute chart. Like in the example of this trade, this entry here, um, this red volume didn't beat this green volume. The sellers are still in charge over here, which helps to justify this entry in this trade. Back here, and I don't know the official word on this, but it's something that I've noticed. Obviously, this green volume doesn't beat this red volume, and yet we have a really nice move up. This happened after a big dump out, and I've noticed that like a dump out will often end in like a couple really like heavy looking volume candles, which for the rest of the price action don't mean anything, don't seem to mean anything.
Mhm.
It seems to me like it's just the volume that was necessary to bring it down to the level of support. I wouldn't know the theory behind that, or you know what I mean, like how it sets up, but it's just something that I've noticed because it's like, man, look at all that red volume, and like, look, no consequence. So
Yeah.
it's like, so I'm comfortable with like knowing like that, hey, maybe this is just the volume required to bring it down or whatever the reason is. But still, it leaves me a little less confident if there hasn't been like, you know what I mean? Like, and there wouldn't be like a huge green like right after this one. Like that, it could happen, it has happened, but it probably won't happen in general. It's not something I ought to be looking for, I think.
That those type of kind of that type of price action movement is like on data candles where you see a kind of whip, and then it's like, oh, we're digest the news, and then it'll whip right up, and that's
Yeah.
rare too. That's
Right.
still rare too.
Yeah. But this stuff, it's like if I do want to play the setup on the first pullback, like these often do happen, and it's like I guess I just maybe need to not think about them as much or something.
Mhm.
Like have you noticed anything about that? Because like I know that you do really well at like um buying at like the bottoms of plays, like a 200 SMA play. Like, do you in your mind, if you see this at support, do you kind of feel like volume just sort of resets as a matter of speaking, like after that, or do you not really have a way of looking at that?
Well, you see it deplete, and what you want to see is TTM kind of changing colors.
Hmm.
So at the bottom of when you see it kind of right here at the bottom,
Yeah.
and then at the pullback right here, at the pullback at your buy zone, you want to see TTM. You want to get see sellers getting out the way.
Yeah.
So that'll kind of clarify. Okay, sellers are getting out the way. The TTM changes colors right here in this little one.
Hmm.
So you're telling yourself already, okay, this should be a RSI high or low right here.
Yeah.
And if it does create a higher low, then it's gonna bounce, or it's like I said, like sometimes this fib right here that you drew,
Yeah.
sometimes this is 100, right? Like
Right.
like we said we would redraw.
Yeah.
And if it's 4 or 5 points from this point to the 100, that could be your first target. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna lock in whatever, right? Um, Lock in 75 or close it out right there. Um, Close it out and then reevaluate. Okay, it comes back down. It has center. It has a buy zone. Has TTM sellers getting out of the way. Um, it came back down, created a higher low, RSI
Mhm.
still, and then you want it, see it go right there,
Yeah.
bust through. As soon as you see this candle, this green candle right here,
Hmm.
you're kind of want to expect price action or RSI to smash through price action
Yeah.
right here. That's what you want to see. And then once you see the RSI smash through the 50, and then you can expect, okay, now it's gonna hit my target.
Yeah. But your entry like needs to be right here though.
Yes. And that's where fishing orders help.
Yeah.
They help you stick to your trade plan
Yeah.
instead of just hoping like, okay, because remember what I said is you want to see small candles at the top coming down. You don't want to see candles like this, even though that one could have been scary, right? When because if you had a fishing order right here,
Right.
if you had that and you're like, okay, perfect, it's gonna pull back to my zone. And then like me, usually what I would have had done is have an order out at the 100 for a pull back up to the 200 or the 261.
Yeah.
Um, but even then, once you get a little bit more experience, if you have a fishing order out here, you're telling yourself, okay, you're looking down. Should I stop out? Where's your stop out? If
Hmm.
you get in at the 100, it depends because sometimes, like I said, the fibs are stretched out a little bit more than your tolerable stop loss.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but let's just say it's 2 points from the 100 to the buy zone. Then your typical stop loss is 2 points. Then you're gonna tell yourself a hard open close below that. You know,
Hmm.
even though you're gonna take more than a 2 point loss. So you just gotta be aware of that. Or you just, hey, if it hits a stop loss right there, I'm out.
Yeah.
But just be aware that this can happen. You know, it hits your stop loss at the 50 and it bounces. And that's why you're asking yourself, well, how come it bounces every time? How come it bounces every time I get out? Well,
Yeah.
because you're getting out where everybody's getting in.
Getting in. Yeah. Yeah. It makes me want to only enter in the lower zone, the 50-38, you know?
Yeah, like that's like if you're getting into fibs, just for right now, just do that. Just use the buy zone. Don't get the failed 161, pull back to the 100, and then run. That will add later. Once you get consistent with this play where you line up all your indicators that you just identified, and you already know, you just talked us through what you like to see.
Yeah.
Hey, Lasagna Cat,
Yeah.
back to your kind of question you had about those the volume and those red dump candles.
Right.
I think, and I kind of hesitate to say it, but I'm going to. I believe that you really should ignore those. If
Right.
you, if, I think in like watching some of Brandon's old videos about the whole volume beat strategy or whatever, I
Hmm.
think those dump candles you're supposed to ignore, and you start waiting for the consolidation zone. So it's
Yep,
really after those dump candles, you got that a bunch of candles that is
yep.
consolidation.
Yeah.
That's where you're looking for the beats and no beats. Those first two, you really should just kind of
That was the leg. That was the leg
ignore.
of the play down.
Yeah.
And following that, you've got that nice green volume. Sure, it wasn't the dump candle volume, but nothing beat that volume going all the way. Going up, even that big one that you have no beat there didn't
Yeah.
get that high. So the volume beat kind of worked there. Like I said, you're supposed to ignore those. With
Yeah.
all that being said, Brandon has made a few comments in during the live streams that the volume isn't doing what it used to do. Kind of there's a lot more like hidden volume, so I
Hmm.
don't think he's really right now using the volume beat strategy like he used to.
Yeah.
um it's like you just kind of have to play with it a little bit more because it doesn't seem to be quite what it used to be.
So
But anyway.
Yeah, great points, Whiplash. Yeah, he said that volume beats is, or that volume is a little bit wonky. What I've been using is RSI and MACD most of the time, the last 2 weeks. Every now and then I take a peek at volume, but just to see if I see like consecutive buyers like this one right here, if I start seeing that, um, yeah. So your zone would start from here and go to here,
Yeah,
you know. So you would start it right here. So that's a green. That's if any red goes above that, it might continue going down.
right.
Um,
And this, like, is so would this be premature? Also, JJ has a question that we should get to.
yeah, he said, where is the buy zone? And that all depends. Some of us have different buy zones. When I first started, it was the 61% to the 50%. My initial entry was at the 61%, and then my second entry for a full position was at the 50%. Um, Now I have adjusted it to the 50% to the 38% as my buy zone. That's my premium buy zone. Where I'll get in at the 50 at half position, and then my full position will be at the 38. Now that being said, if I see it bounce off the 38 and hold the 38 and the buy zone, my max entry above the 50 is a point and a half. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's say the 61%, let's say it held the 50 and for some reason I didn't enter at the 38 and I see it hold the 50% and then I see it go up and then okay, I'll be like, let's say the 61 and the 50% are like 2 points away. Um, that'll probably be my max entry is the 61 on the way up, but usually I use like a 1 to 2 point buffer where if it passes that, I'll just let the initial two contracts ride, or I don't want to risk losing more. Um,
and then the
uh,
stop.
the stop loss, my stop loss now is, since I get in at the 38 and the 50, my stop loss is a hard open close below the 23%. You could do a hard open close below the 38. It just depends on what you're willing to lose. And don't get mad if you get stopped out and then it wicks back up. You'll slowly readjust to that. You'll slowly adjust your strategy to that.
Yeah, I think you should, especially like new traders. This is what I'm trying to do now. It's kind of like speaking to it, is putting the fishing order in at either the 50 or the 38, but no higher than the 50.
Yep.
And then the stop out should be a hard open close under the 38. So it could be the next candle. I mean, it could come down, hit the 38, fill your order, and then the next candle just goes lower and you have to immediately stop out. That definitely happens. But if you do that, your stop out is minimal.
Yep.
Obviously, it's going to depend on how big the fib is,
Yeah.
but you're talking just a point or two, very manageable loss. But if you get in higher, if you get in at the 61 and your stop loss is, a hard open close on the 38, well, that's suddenly more points. It's considerably bigger. And obviously, the higher you go, the bigger that stop loss is, and it gets, can really eat away at you. So if you're beginning, put a fishing order in at the 38, and then just watch it. You can't do an ATM strategy because, as far as I know, you can't do an ATM strategy that has a hard open close. So you have to really be paying attention and watching it. But the second it closes, opens and closes under that 38, just kill it and start over. And then it's only a couple points, and no biggie. And then if it goes up from there, okay, you only lost a couple points, not a big deal. But so many times, like this example right here, it didn't do that. It got below the 138 that but then it got sucked right back up and continued higher. Never hard open close under the 38.
That one tip alone, the hard open close, has saved me so many uh, wick outs. That's a shakeout too. You know, you get shaken. Um, that's one of the tips that kind of helped me not get shook. But it's got to be a hard rule for you, and make it a hard rule for you
It takes a
because
ton of the stress out when you do it.
it
Because like
does.
I
And
know exactly where I'm going to get out. If this goes bad, I know exactly where I'm going to get out. And I also know where my targets are. My target is going to be the 100 or the 168. So I know where it's going and I know where I'm getting out. And it just takes all the guesswork out of it. When you don't do it, for me, when I don't do it, I'm just like my head is like just all over the place. My anxiety's through the roof. I don't know what I'm doing. Then it starts going lower and I'm panicking. Like, should I get out now or do I add in more? And it's a
yeah,
freaking mess. So it definitely works, especially new, for newer people. And I'm definitely included in that category. I think it's the way to go.
yeah, definitely. That's you don't want to create bad habits, and if you hold and you don't have a rule of that sort, you're gonna bag hold and you're just gonna blow up your account. Trust me, I know firsthand. That was one of the ways that I blew up my first account is bag holding, and I was hoping for it to go up. And it's like, no, you should have a plan. You should, hey, it stops out here. Don't get mad because it saved you. You know that could have saved you $300, or it could have saved you your account or whatever. That's you could thank that stop loss that you have it there, and thank that rule that thank you for stopping me out and giving me the opportunity to reevaluate my trade. Be thankful for that. Don't be mad and vengeful because you start getting those feelings of like, fuck, I got stopped out. And then you're gonna get in that mindset where you're gonna start kind of getting mad and angry, and you're gonna start revenge trading, which you don't want to get into that mood, um, because that's gonna really mess up your day. Um, so have that rule set in place, set in stone until you get more comfortable. Once you get more comfortable, like Whiplash said, you can't have the ATM strategy, but use the ATM strategy. I used to use the ATM strategy religiously because it takes out most of the emotion out of the trade. Where you have your stop loss, you can adjust your stop loss to your tolerance. So if you want a 2 point stop loss, put a 2 point stop loss. That's your stop loss. Let the ATM strategy work out. Um, and then after you get used to your ATM strategy, you're gonna adjust your stop loss to either moving average, or you're gonna adjust it down to the 23%, and then after that, you're just gonna have a mental stop loss, like have a hard open close below the 23% or whatever the 38% if you decide to use the 38.
And
Um,
if you get stopped out, if you do that, the hard open close, you get stopped out, and then it reverses and starts going your direction. Don't be like, oh man, I can't, I just stopped out and now it's going in my direction. You should be patting yourself on the back going, you know what? That was my rule. I stopped out and so what? It went back up. There'll be another trade.
yep,
My losses were minimal, but I followed my rules and I got out when I was supposed to, because mathematically you're going to win doing this on the long term. And if you don't, but if you don't do those, for every time it kind of goes down and goes back up, there's times when it just flushes, it keeps going south and you're
yep,
screwed.
yep.
So, pat yourself on the back going, you know what? I got out, I followed my rule and I got out. I don't care what it did.
That's where you're creating those good habits and like following your rules. Even Brandon has been good at that. He said, "This is my rule. I'm taking a red trade, and if he takes a red trade and he gives money back, he said, "That's my rule. I'm shutting down. Shut down. Shut
And
down the platform,
it
You
works
don't
on the reverse too on the buy order. So if you put your fishing order in, if you put the fishing order in at the 38, there's going to be a bunch of these fibs where it doesn't get down that low and you just miss it. It just doesn't get to the 38 and it keeps going higher. But you got to be okay with that too and say, you know what? I missed it. I'll wait for the next one. I got to wait another hour for this all to set up again or however long it takes, but it didn't, I followed my rules. It didn't fill, and go on
Yep.
with your life.
Yep, and that's where that having, also having that rule where you say, okay, as of like this last week, it kind of shies. Price action was shying some levels. Um, Sometimes when it does that, that rule where you put in place where it says, okay, the highest point that I'll enter this trade is at 1.5 points above the 50%. You know, if it hits that mark, then you could potentially get in, but I wouldn't try to create that habit. You want to see it hit your level before you're getting in. You know what I'm saying? You don't want price action to go right here and it's 1.5 points above your level and it didn't hit your level. You know, it didn't hit your level and it shies it and then it goes up. Even though it's 1.5 points or 2 points above, that rule that you set, it's kind of risky because yeah, it might hit your 1.5 points. It might go up right here to confirm, hit those moving averages, and then continue going down. So Brandon's good at that. He says if it doesn't hit his level, he's not getting in unless he sees another play like the fail 161. You know, and it's still kind of higher up here, or the 100 would be right here. Hopefully that answers your question and clarifies any issues you may be having.
Then one more question about the volume.
Yeah.
So like since this volume is since these two big reds are like maybe not in the picture anymore, and these two look good, and then there's obviously only very small volume getting back down to the ad zone. So is that a good volume read to go long already, or would the savvy trader feel like that's too soon to know? Because none of this beat, but there wasn't much time. But there is all this. There's pretty good reason to go long, like with the RSI and the support.
I
Uh,
think that's what Brandon is saying is that volume is really not that clear.
yeah,
Um, the only thing that would kind of help you clarify is TTM, but that would be in this candle right here.
yeah,
So you would have to, like I said earlier, is wait for it to hold that level, that doji level, and if it holds it, then get in.
true.
That's the only thing that I see
Yeah,
that would kind of help you, is you don't want to see like this green candle beating out this stuff right here,
hmm,
because then it probably would continue going down to the ball right here. And then who knows, it might hold and base down right here. But yeah.
all right, cool. Also, a good rule of thumb for people just learning fibs is like this one I have drawn that we've been talking about. It doesn't have any interactions with any moving averages up there. But when you see a next leg up and the pullback is from a moving average interaction, then you definitely want to redraw your fib down from here down, because this has no data interactions. It's just kind of floating in space. It is a legitimate pullback, but it's floating in space in that way.
Mhm.
Whereas if it's top rooted to a moving average, it's a lot more stable. I guess that's a good word, stable.
But I don't know if other traders would think it's conventional, but I would think it's unconventional, and the way that I use it is the same way that you use it. Even though it's not attached to any moving averages,
Yeah.
it can help you kind of predict price action. You know what I'm saying? Like we said earlier, is hold your buy zone. You want the bodies to close above your buy zone, or
Yeah.
you want to see a higher low off of that buy zone.
Yeah.
So you see, okay, let's say you're in this trade and you fib this out and you tell yourself, okay, I want to see a higher low off this buy zone. Once I see a higher low off this buy zone, the next fib, all fib is interaction, a pullback interaction with the moving average.
Yeah.
And then you can, let's say you're a rookie trader, you wouldn't take this trade because you're not used to that type, but you fibbed out your big fib over here, and then it entered your buy zone, then you can trade this part.
Hmm.
But only trade that. Don't try to trade other setups. Only trade it until you get comfortable. Yeah, for the first couple of months, you might only have one trade, two trades a day, but that's okay. Um, like I said, the fib trade, you could probably use three or four, maybe 5 times a day. I've used it 5 times a day consistently, and that is just to kind of guide me, like I said, to walk myself through the trade where I say, okay, I want a higher low right here. If a higher low's here, okay, this is what I want to see next. You know?
And that's the conversation. The conversation is, what do I want to see next?
Yeah.
In terms of this setup, just looking at it right now, the only thing that I really have another question about, it's a MACD question.
Mhm.
So the second entry or second trade. Here's the MACD over here. Now it's the thing I noticed, the second circle here. It's like it's kind of like a pullback. You know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
there are instances where it pulls back to the, I forget what the different lines are called, but
Yeah.
back to the bottom line and then take off, kind of like a pullback. Like, so it's getting smaller, but the point of it getting smaller is a pullback, not a cross.
Yep.
You know, um, just another thing to keep an eye out for. Like, in other words, like we're watching the pullback, we're wanting to get filled at our ad zone, and it's like, yeah, when so before this forms, what's the conversation you're having with yourself about MACD if there's something going on, like
You
conversation?
you wanted to hold that line.
Yeah,
You wanted to hold that line, and you wanted to hold that buy zone.
right,
If it does those two, then you're good.
right. Cool.
And the good thing is it creates a higher low right here. Uh, That is straight on the RSI right here.
Hmm.
So even those trend lines work. Um, the trend lines that we draw on the chart, they work on RSI as well. And you
Yeah,
want to hear, okay, you want to see a bounce, you want to see a bounce,
yeah,
and then you want to see a bounce. Okay, it's gonna bust through. If you were to see this, you're gonna say, okay, I want it to bust through the RSI and then hold it, because then that would be right there.
right.
You know.
Cool, cool.
So if you have to draw trend lines, then just to help you guide, that help you see that divergence, or see the RSI creating higher lows, and that's gonna kind of guide your brain. Okay, you want to see it bounce off of that line, or at
Yeah,
least create a higher low off of that line. And
yeah,
sometimes you have to visually see it. Um, and once you get used to it, you won't need it. You'll be like, okay, it's RSI divergence. You're like, other people will be like, well, I don't see it. And
right.
you already know that you see it.
Yeah.
That's something that 709 is working on, which is pretty cool, is the RSI divergence study, and it automatically draws that divergence line for you. So can't wait for that to come out.
Yeah. JJ's got a fib question.
It depends. The question was, When your trade is complete by reaching the 16168 and later on the day and repeat again to the buy zone, do you re-enter? That'll depend. Um, if price action went like way above that zone, like way above the 261 or the 400, then it probably invalid, and I wouldn't re-enter it. I would look for a fib. Like if like let's say I had the trade, right? I completed the trade and I walked away from my computer and I was working on whatever I was working. And then I came back later in the day, and later on the day, and let's say it's power hour. I come up and I still have that same fib setup. If that same fib setup fits the price action in that setup, hopefully I'm not confusing you. So let's say the setup that I'm talking about is the way with the elite system is you always want to see confirmation, right? So you want to see it smash through your support level or your trend level or your um, resistance level. You want to see it bust through it, right? So the confirmation, the elite system is for it to come back, tag that level, whether it's a fib level, whether it's a trend line, whatever it is. The elite system confirmation is for it to come back down, hit that level to confirm that it has momentum to keep going up. So let's say I came back and it's power hour right now and I'm using that same fib. I want to see price action creating a higher low off that same thing. Just like I said, if I see a higher low and it looks similar and that fib validates, um, then I'll use it. Let's say that it doesn't completely match up with price action, then you would draw a fib on that first red pullback or a red pullback that has interaction with moving averages and scrap. And you can leave that old fib that you use in the morning, like leave it up and then draw another fib if you see another significant candle. Whether it's a candle that touches multiple moving averages, whether it's a candle that has big wicks and it's like a doji, like a cross doji like that. Um, just redraw it to see if it lines up with those buy zones from the prior fib. And if it do line up, do what we said earlier today when Whiplash asked the question, would you use the same fib? And if they line up with the buy zone, then that's the zone. And that goes from one of the YouTube videos that I watched, and I think Brandon may have introduced it where the levels kind of overlap, and if they overlap, then that level is strong. It's that much stronger. So there's a couple ways. Um, so hopefully that answers your question.
Hey, Simper, we have about a little bit more than 15 minutes left of record time.
Okay,
Uh, just to give you a heads up.
sure. Thank you.
Um, and so I don't have much else to say about this slide here. This is a fairly good representation of the setup that I'm going to be looking for. And I'm going to look for these kinds of entries, and I'm going to look for these kinds of entries, first pullback and second pullback.
Yep.
And yeah, and so this is my starting point.
Awesome. Like I said, start creating those rules. Like, you want to see a pullback into your buy zone. You want to see RSI, maybe back in, go from overheat
Mhm.
into back into the normal zone, or you can say you want to see RSI creating higher lows.
Yeah.
So like that, the rules are, and the reason why I want you to write them out or type them out is I want you to print them out and have them out in front of you.
Yeah.
So like that, you're keeping yourself accountable because we obviously we're all trading, so we can't hold each other accountable, but you can hold yourself accountable by having those rules in front of you, and actually listening to yourself. Um,
And
um,
I
Stick to the rules.
yeah, I like the way your list was last week, where each rule is actually a question. Is there a high or low?
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah, list them like that. Um, Ask yourself a question. So like that, you're having that conversation in your head.
Yeah.
You're reading the questions, silently or out loud, whatever. You're kind of calling out the plays, just like
Yeah.
Brandon does. You're teaching yourself to call out the plays. And if you see the plays, that should give you the confidence. That should give you the confidence to take the trade.
Yeah.
Um, So if like I said, if you see that first red pullback, okay, I fibbed that first red pullback. That's like, okay, if that's, and create a system, um, Lasagna Cat. So let's say you see RSI, um, so the way that I do it is, especially when RSI is in the bottom zone down here,
Hmm.
when it's down there and I see the line kind of spreading away, spreading apart,
Yeah.
right, or spreading apart right here. Um, I'm already I'm already telling myself I'm not gonna get in until it overcools. Okay, so that's already kind of keeping yourself checked. Number one. Okay, I'm not gonna. You see it right here. Boom, right? It didn't hit right here. You see price action coming down, and you're like, all right, right here. You know for sure this little green right here.
Hmm.
You're it happened right here. Look, and it's right in the middle of the RSI.
Yeah.
So you're telling yourself right there, like, okay, if I see a higher low off of here, then maybe I'll think about getting in. Only because Bollinger Band is right here, right?
Right.
And that's one of the rules. But that was only one of them. One of the rules, right? You don't have volume, you don't have TTM, and you don't have RSI. And it looks like you don't even have MACD
Nah.
right here. Um, yeah, you don't even have MACD. MACD is over here.
Yeah.
So you're gonna
MACD's spreading.
you're gonna create rules or questions that you're gonna say you're not gonna get in until it overcools, until RSI overcools, even if you see this, because you're like, oh shit, am I high or low right here? Okay, it kind of went up right here and then it shot back down. You would
Yeah.
have got smoked if you only went off of based off that Bollinger Band rule where we say if it breaks outside the band right here
Hmm.
to get in. You don't
Yeah.
get in just based on one thing. You might have a bounce off of this move. What's this moving average?
200 SMA.
Um, so you may have got in there, but like I said, you're not doing the 200 SMA bounce. So don't even think about doing that play yet.
Right. Yeah.
You're just looking for a fib. You're just looking for the fib play, and your fib play is a higher low. You want to see a higher low, so you see a big bounce like this happen.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Bollinger Band. That's one rule. You have RSI because you already told yourself it's in overheat or overcool,
Yeah.
right? So you already have two rules right there. Um, you want to see a higher low, so you went into overcool, and then it's in overcool, and then you see a first red pullback.
Yep.
You see the first red pullback, you fib it. You fib it like instantly. You see it going red, just fib it out. If it turns green, then erase it.
Yep.
But if you see it going red, fib it out. And then you're telling yourself, like I told you before, you want to see a higher low off the buy zone, and you want to see it back into regular. That's where you expect. That's where you would expect price action to be, that's where you would expect RSI to be when price action hits your buy zone. You want to
Yeah.
see RSI right here. So that's already two. And then you start to see the MACD go back into the normal range right here. And you got the MACD cross right here. You see
That's
that?
yeah.
That's already your third rule. You want to see MACD cross.
Oh, MACD is the one above it. That one's RSI.
Oh yeah,
MACD.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you get the cross right here.
Yeah.
And once you hit three, you can hit buy.
Right.
You could put that right there. Once you hit three, hit buy.
Once you hit three, hit buy. Yeah. I like that.
uh, or once you hit three, click buy or whatever the rule is.
Yeah.
Um, and hopefully that'll build confidence in that strategy. And you already walked yourself through that trade, right? So you see the MACD, boom. You see the TTM also coincide with that.
Hmm.
There's no green volume beats right here. It's all red. I mean, it's all green, not red.
Yep.
Uh, so all signs go. Fucking get in.
Yeah.
Um, and create rules around that. Either question based or like say you could put a rule like do not get in case I have unless I have three catalysts. Um, don't get in unless I know don't get in unless I know trend.
Yep.
Is remember trend is your friend. You have to know trend so you know how to plan your trade. Like I said, if it's in a long trend, if it's in a long trend, I usually try to catch 10 to 15 points. If it's in a short trend and I'm counter trend trading, then I'm looking for 4 to 6 points.
Yeah.
The the trend will tell you your plan for the day. So this day I might have to only take 3 trades because it's a short it's a short trend and I'm a counter trend trader today. I'm not, I'm only gonna take 5 points, 4 or 5 trades. You may have to adjust your goal,
Yeah.
um, or just be aware that you might not hit your goal that day.
Right.
Um, but yeah. So next week, create those rules, and then we'll go over them, and hopefully have more examples of your strategy.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
I was just taking notes this last 2 weeks, but I'll do sim trading next week.
yeah, feel free. If you feel comfortable sim trading, you know, just so you could get in the habit of okay, it hit my three catalysts, or I'm gonna hit buy
Yeah.
or whatever it is, just so you can start creating those good habits of okay, I'm gonna trust my trade, I'm gonna trust myself, I'm gonna trust the trade, and it's gonna play out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, and have your targets, whether it's the 100 or the 161. Like I said, you can adjust them based on how spread out the fib is.
Yeah.
Um, just so you can have a couple of targets, and have them established, and you can be confident. Okay, if the 100 is 6 points away and it's in the uptrend, then I might hit my 161 because that's gonna give you the gauge of the trade, so you can be like, okay, it may have enough steam to hit my 161.
Right.
Or it might run out of steam at the 100, depending on how RSI looks too. Um, But yeah, let RSI and MACD tell you the way.
Sounds good.
Um, so thanks everybody for participating.
Oh,
Thanks for all the
also,
great questions.
uh,
Um,
JJ wants to know when's the meeting at next week.
our meetings are on Fridays at 11:30. Sometimes we'll jump in a little bit early and just chit chat, or if you don't like to be on live, um, we'll chit chat before. So if you want to share something that you don't want to be recorded on, um, you know,
And
feel
also
free.
that's 11:30 Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my time. We're slowly looking to schedule a second day, but I'm still working, so it's kind of hard with kids to schedule a second day right now. But hopefully soon we'll have 2 days to accommodate a couple more members to attend. As the way the way this helps is everybody helps everybody. Whether it's Whiplash helping me see something that I didn't see, whether it's Lasagna Cat teaching us something going through this, or being more consistent. But the main goal of this is to help each other be more consistent and find a way. Find your own unique way. Find your own unique way of trading. We don't want to. We want to try to help you find your way. You know what I'm saying? Um, because whether you're a new trader trying to find your way or a struggling trader trying to find your way, hopefully we can help you find your way and find your strategy and help you be consistent. So thanks everybody. Um, have a great weekend and see you guys on Monday. I might be on the chat on Sunday depending on how futures looks. So just be on the lookout. Always good always good practice to trade on Sunday, because sometimes it gives you a little bit of a heads up of what might be to come, what might be coming on Monday. So that's why I kind of like to jump in on Sunday. I might take a trade or two just to have a cushion. But I usually most of the time I only trade once on Sunday if there's something good. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks again. See you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
Yeah, thank you, guys.